and welcome to Teaching Physical Sciences. Today we've got Temba back. Hello, Temba.
How are you, Ellen?
Always good, and very happy to see you again.
Pleasure's all mine.
Oh, good. That's the right response. And of course, we have Dylan behind the buttons. Remember that he will be watching Facebook, Twitter, and the chat box for your comments. If you're on Twitter, use the hashtag MEScience. If you're on Facebook, search for us, Digital Classroom South Africa. Find the post for today, and you'll see it's got a picture of today's show, Exploiting the Lithosphere, and comment underneath it. Dylan will be watching the comments over there. And of course, if you're not on Facebook and you're not on Twitter, and there are some of us out there who don't want to be on either one of those, you can just chat to us in the chat box that's just below this viewing window. So scroll down, choose a nickname, click log on, and Dylan will be there as well. Remember, you can win 110 Rands Vodacom airtime if you talk to us, so get chatting. Also, you could tell us that we're talking rubbish, or you could tell us that you agree with what we're saying. It would be really good to hear your comments, and Dylan will tell us your comments during the show. Okay, so Temba, you have been here before.
Correct.
Why don't you remind us who you are again?
Okay, thanks, Helen. Again, my name is Temba Nue. I'm a physical sciences teacher at Ludirile Secondary School in the West Rand. I've been teaching science for the past 9 to 10 years.
Okay.
Yes, it has been a wonderful experience. And, of course, working with you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
But science is an interesting subject to teach. You go all over the place in terms of content. It must be quite exciting.
Indeed, it is. Yeah, it is. It is exciting. Yeah, and you get lots of hands-on. You learn through doing, which is always interesting in science. Yes.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you know, Temba, because you've been here before, and I'm sure you've watched many of the webinars, you know that we've been reading this book, Teach Like a Champion. It's got 49 techniques that put students on the path to college. That's what it says on the bottom. I'm not convinced that the 49 techniques will put students on the path to college. I think a lot of the techniques will make the class easier for the teacher to handle.
To manage.
But I think they're more teacher-focused than student-focused. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
Shall we take a look at today's one?
Correct.
Yes, it says technique number 22. It's called cold call. And this is a quote out of the book. It says, "How can I adapt my decisions about which students I call on to help all my students pay better attention?" I like this one, and I don't like all of them. I like this one because it talks to not always calling on the person who has their hand up all the time. If you do that, you're always going to be calling on the same 3 people.
Correct.
If you're bouncing around the class, it means that you're able to keep everyone's attention because they're never quite sure when you're going to call on them again.
Yeah, true.
Yes. So that's my personal opinion on it.
Okay, but Helen, that part of choosing who to call on, maybe in a typical class, you'd get a situation whereby some learners will not voluntarily say something. So one has to go about it very tactfully.
Yes.
Yes, because at the same time, you do not want to smash their confidence, which is very key. With kids, learning is somewhat different because they say something wrong. You need to encourage them, say, okay, no, that's what he or she thinks. What do the others think, And then in the process, they get to be involved in the lesson, which is very key.
Yes.
And who you call on at the time, it needs to be somebody who will give you something which is closer to the answer, or if not at all, the definite answer, so that you guide them through the process of responding.
So you're saying it's not so much about keeping their attention.
You need to know
it's
your
about
kids.
Yes.
Yes. That's very important.
Beautifully said. Said like a true teacher.
That's
Yeah. And I agree completely.
Oh.
Okay, we've got a full show today, so we're going to go straight on to the 5-point teaching strategy. And we're speaking about teaching grade 11, exploiting the lithosphere.
Yes.
Okay, so your first point says emphasis on the big idea of why mining.
Okay. Like I always say, Helen, why mining? That's your big idea. One other colleague of mine says, if it is not grown, it's probably mined.
Okay.
The idea is how important is it mining as an industrial economic sector in our country? Maybe that's the understanding that maybe learners need to have after all has been said and done.
So you would start off the section by exploring why we mine in South Africa.
Yes.
How much history would you go into?
Not so much into history because it goes way back. You don't want to spend a lot of time on that. However, how mining is developed over the years from the Stone Age to the modern technology, I think you may briefly touch on that. It becomes important, so they appreciate that technology indeed it's a part of our lives.
Yes.
So you also look at the infrastructure.
Yes.
In those locations where mining activities do take place on a large scale industrially, and see how it has helped shape the infrastructure of that, how employment opportunities. Most of our kids enjoy bursary opportunities from big mining giants.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we are allowed to mention those.
No, of course, of course.
Anglo Platinum, Ashanti Gold, so it becomes a very important part of our day-to-day lives,
And do you mention those kinds of opportunities when you're in the classroom?
You do. Particularly, these are grade 11s, by the way. Something that's also worth mentioning is that the results they get at the end of the year in grade 11, that's the first requirement. You need to do well in grade 11 to secure space. I always try to encourage my learners.
And of course, if you're applying for those kinds of bursaries, you need to have those results.
True. So I think this becomes very important, and check the perfect timing. When do we do it? In the third quarter. Just before the exam. Just keep that in check. It becomes very key.
And do you focus mostly on gold mining?
I'd rather contextualize it, If I wasn't teaching in Joburg, let's say I was in the Northwest, I would talk to platinum because that's what happens in the Northwest province.
Okay.
But gold, I'm in Johannesburg, so it becomes relevant to my learners, in our circumstances, contextualizing. So they relate what we learn in class to what happens around us, which is the big idea after all,
Yes. Mining is quite important to South African economy, so it is something they should know about.
It indeed, like I've said, Helen, agriculture and mining, I won't be so sure which one comes first, but in more ways than one, they are linked, as we shall speak to that at a later stage,
Okay, now the second point says integration with other subjects. And this is something that doesn't really happen in class.
I'll take advantage of this section, if any teacher goes to the CAPS guideline document, it does speak to integration more often than once,
Yes.
But then how often do we do it as teachers? To say, okay, we speak of where gold deposits are, Johannesburg, Gauteng, platinum is in Mafeking or Rustenburg, then in terms of location, it doesn't get any better than maybe speaking to your geography again.
Okay.
So most of our learners they are it's quite unfortunate. They may be confined to one place, but this section also gives them that window to say, oh, there are quite a lot of mining activities that beyond the confines of Johannesburg, as the most famous mining town.
Yes.
Yeah, So I really talk to that, and also as far as integration, we shall speak to it later. Just briefly, maybe to touch on that. The impact on the environment, biodiversity, ecological imbalances and all that, that's your life sciences, Economics is an economic contributor,
Yes.
So it simply says to me, okay, so, well, some science learners may be taking economics as one of the subjects, so it links with that very well.
So this could be any type of mining that you discuss?
Any type of mining. Remember,
yes.
Remember, again, we are given a lot of options.
Yes.
So almost every part of the country is covered,
You could even talk about fracking then, or could you?
I'm not so sure about that.
Okay.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Okay. Well, the next point says use flow charts to summarize processing of minerals.
Okay. On the third point, I think, well, it's my opinion. We usually concentrate more on the rote teaching of chemistry. That's the chemistry in class.
Well, it's easier to teach. Well, not so much easier to teach, but it's easier to prove that you've taught it. Because you give it to them, and then they've got it, and you can say, well, look, it was taught.
But then what becomes important is when it was treated, did learners get a clear understanding of that? Because to me, if I can recall to say, in cyanidation, this is what I'll do, just for an example, does it mean I have an understanding of it? I think not.
Yeah.
And it's often the case with kids. If you give them notes, they'll take down the notes. Some are good enough to reproduce that.
Yes.
But, if the process if justice was done to it, you'd obviously expect maybe the kids to give you more,
yes.
In terms of how does it occur, when does it occur, how does it impact, what are the conditions, as opposed to just recalling and printing the information.
Recalling a flowchart. Yeah.
So I thought also that is a key point.
Okay, the third point or fourth point says use case studies to emphasize on the important skills, analyzing, drawing conclusions, and evaluating impact of mining. Okay.
What I would like to say, Helen, is that oftentimes we teach kids what we've been doing, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's the correct thing. If you check as per the dictates of the guideline document, after all the teaching has been done, learners need to have those skills of analyzing information, drawing conclusions, given context. That's what I will do. Maybe say give them a debate of some sort, let them construct their own body of knowledge. That's a skill, in creating a better understanding.
It doesn't really sound like a skill you would use in science or do in science.
You need that.
Why?
Because what's the point of recalling and not maybe being in a position to use that in everyday life? Because there's this other aspect of science which is also key, which is often neglected. What the learning that takes place in class. How then is it relevant in our everyday life context?
Yes.
So to me, it's a skill. So we need also to address that as well. If I can say, okay, cyanide is a poison, so if it is disposed of irresponsibly, in turn it will affect the environment, and it comes back to me. So what you give to the universe, that's what I normally say to my grade 8s, it will give it back to you.
Okay.
So that kind of responsible use of these resources.
And doing case studies and analyzing case studies,
yes.
That would...
And as for the case study, the more relevant it is to your circumstances, the better.
Okay.
I wouldn't take something that happens in Russia, or in the Eastern Cape.
Yes.
Yet there's quite a lot of mining activity taking place in my neighborhood, just in my backyard. So I would use that. So in a way, it even changes the mindset of the learners, which I think is also key.
Yeah, because as they're traveling home, they can see the effects around them.
Long-term and short-term effects. So I think also that is very, very important.
Yeah. And the last point says use of hands-on learner activities to investigate properties of matter and relate that to their everyday life or everyday life uses.
Okay. On this one, Helen, I had something in mind already. Science is every day. Like I always say to my learners, now you get to a point where the understanding of physical properties of matter it's just recalled for the sake of the exams and passing.
Yes.
But then beyond the confines of the classroom, let's take, for example, copper and iron, which is one of the options that learners may look into as far as exploitation of the S-crust, the lithosphere, in other words. Now, you check this physical property of corrosion resistance. Some materials rust, some they do not. You ask kids, why do we use copper pipes for the geyser?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because it's corrosion resistance. So that physical property is directly related to its everyday life use. So what happens in class and what happens at home or just around us becomes the science that we have to teach the kids.
So you're encouraging them to think about their surroundings in a scientific way.
Correct.
Going back to that skill of analyzing and drawing conclusions.
And as a teacher, sometimes I'm not aware I'm imparting that kind of a skill. But if the more of such activities I do, the better. And now, they can draw conclusions. Say, okay, this is why we use copper. And iron, we need to protect it because, as opposed to copper, it can be corroded easily. So that kind of thinking, that's what I would want to impart to my learners.
Yes. Yeah. Shall we take a look at your 3 pressure points?
Oh, yes.
Yes. The first one says prior learning, and that's the chemical formulae, the periodic table, and those come from grade 10.
Yes.
Have you done it again in grade 11?
As far as prior learning is concerned, just before, maybe some teachers may differ, according to the outline of our content, just before we start our chemical systems, we would have done your oxidation, redox reactions, which is very key as far as chemical processing of materials. So it would be an unreasonable expectation for me as a teacher to go into that before making sure that my learners are okay with the chemical form. Can they write equations? Can they balance? Can they classify types of reactions? This is a redox, this is a precipitation, which is what pretty much happens as far as chemical processing. So it becomes very important. So the periodic table, which we do quite a lot in grade 11, usually in the first quarter. So you also need to remind learners of that again, because it becomes very key if you talk to the chemical processing.
Yes, Dylan.
Okay, quick question for you. Is this then a good section? I know that you've spoken a bit about the integration opportunities available here and just making science a little bit more real in every day. But is this also a good opportunity to, because it also comes at the end of the year, to revise a whole lot of concepts and bring everything together?
Perfect. Obviously, at the time we look into exploiting the lithosphere.
Yes.
It's just on the eve of the examinations. About in 3 or a month or so, 3 weeks or so, in a month's time, they'll be sitting for the exam. I would take advantage of that, And just to also, you are creating an impression, which is very important, to say that what we learned in the first quarter is also very much relevant in what we're doing now. So they try to establish
It's important
links.
to make those connections all the time.
The kind of links, very important. I'll take advantage of that. Perfect.
No, good.
Yes. But if time allows, at times it's a luxury we do not have as teachers.
Now, if you can revise those kinds of things in this section, why wouldn't you teach this kind of work in those sections?
As far as chemical, that's a very good question. As far as chemical formula is concerned, to me, I would think of it as a basic. You need that before looking into the complex equations which have to do with the mineral processing and that kind of stuff. So if that is not, justice is not done in that, I think it would be pointless for us to move on to chemical processing. So we need to have a clear understanding of chemical formula in the periodic table itself, of which I, for one, I think I'll take more than 3 weeks doing just the periodic table with the learners, in the 11th grade. It's something which was done in the 10th grade.
Yes.
Now, so it says to me it's very important. I usually refer to it as the Bible, the periodic table. You need to have that. Yeah. So we need to dedicate quite a lot of time.
So you would rather have the basics, have dedicated basics time, and then treat this as an enrichment kind of thing at the end of the year.
Because it only your understanding of the chemical formulae, periodic table, law of conservation of matter, which is the balancing. You know, they love that so much. You know, but now
I do too.
You get to chemical processing. You have very complex equations. You know, and you don't want your learners to kind of struggle to understand that. If they can balance, they can write chemical formula, they can classify whether this is a redox, identify oxidizing, reducing agent.
Yes.
I think you're good to go.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Your second point says adapting information from different sources in the form of a research. And then you've got there plagiarism. So you're doing research in this section?
It's prescribed.
Okay.
Fortunately, it's prescribed. So,
do you do research in any other sections?
No, it's the only research that you have.
In the whole of grade 10, 11 and 12?
In the 11th grade.
In the 11th grade?
Yes. It's probably the last one that you will do at high school.
So nothing in grade 12 either?
Unless things change, of course.
Well, you never know, but today...
But as it stands, that's the only research project that you have. Now, maybe just to speak to that a bit.
Yes, because plagiarism is a big issue.
I tend to think of it beyond the confines of high school. You know, research is a very important tool in learning or form of assessment in learning, which will often be administered even at higher institutions of learning. You know, so you get to a point where you give learners a research topic. You know, say gold mining. They just go into the internet. You know, download stuff, copy and paste it. Then there you go. You know, now you ask yourself, what was their effort in that piece of work? You know, now the idea
and
is...
what have they actually learned?
Yes, those are some of the important questions that learners have to ask themselves when they engage in this kind of assessment. So now, you have got information from different sources. We would encourage them to do that. You know, now we are in a digital world. You know, everything is quick. Just at the press of a button, you get it. So you'd encourage your learners to acknowledge the sources, which is the right thing to do.
Yes.
You know, you can't take somebody's work and pretend it's yours.
Yes.
You know, at the end of the day, you want to learn from that information that you obtain from a particular source. Then it would be proper for the kid to acknowledge that. You know, so that if they go to tertiary, you know,
yes,
they are not penalized for. We may be a bit lenient to them, but at high institutions of learning, as you would know, that is unforgivable.
It is unforgivable. You can be thrown out for plagiarism.
True.
Yeah.
True.
And of course, it's quite easy to check for plagiarism. I know if I need to check. All I do is I take a sentence that's got a couple of big words in, and I type it into Google, and Google will immediately find the web page that sentence comes from.
In a flash.
Yeah.
In a flash.
So as a teacher, it's really easy to check for it.
It's easy. So as long as they stick to the guidelines of how to conduct a research. And a research, it gives you a platform to learn and take charge of your own learning, you know,
yes,
without any restrictions whatsoever. And at the end of the day, one of the skills that the guideline documents dictates is that they need to be in a position to analyze information, you know,
yes,
give their own opinions, you know, all those things. So by plagiarism, they're actually depriving themselves of that opportunity. So any fair-minded teacher will be hard on that.
Yes.
At this very elementary level. Yeah.
If you are a teacher and you need help with how to cite research papers and things like that, there's lots of help on the internet. There are various ways you can put in the links and things like that.
Will you put it on the blog?
I will put it on the blog.
Put some links on the blog.
Yes. Step-by-step guide on how to cite your sources and how to draw up a bibliography.
Yes.
Very These important. Are things we forget.
We maybe we need to go back to the basics of say what exactly a research is, a research project is, you know, then maybe take it from there, you know.
And your last point on the 3 pressure points says recall of various stages involved in mineral processing.
This one, Helen, it becomes a problem if that prior learning is not taken care of. Like I said before,
Okay.
Your chemical formula, your balancing, your periodic table. That's the periodic table in essence.
Yes.
So if it's not well taken care of, I anticipate a lot of problems with my learners. I've seen that particularly with my learners who have shown some elements of weakness in chemical formulae. You keep on piling, and the equations of reactions that are involved in mineral processing are rather complex, relatively. So it becomes a problem. So as far as that, we'll talk to it at a later stage, how best maybe you can, try and circumvent that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then let's move on to how we're going to do that. And we've got a YouTube clip that's going to play now, and then we'll talk to it afterwards.
You guys ready?
Yes, we're ready. And pressing play.
Let's just get past the ad there.
There we go.
We've come to the Modder East gold mine, just outside Johannesburg. It's a city that was founded 130 years ago when gold was discovered in this area. And still half the world's gold reserves are found in South Africa. So we're all kitted up, ready in our protective clothing to go inside the cage, deep underground. Let's go inside. So as it gets darker, you can see the kind of conditions in which the miners go down to work every day. Now, this is a shallow mine. We're going 300 meters below the surface of the ground. But most mines in South Africa are about 3 kilometers below surface. And that's when the heat hits, because every 100 meters you go down, the temperature goes up by about 1 degree Celsius. So we've arrived now 300 meters underground, and feels almost spooky to be this far beneath the Earth's surface. It's kind of damp, it's a bit cool, my ears popped on the way down. You can feel the breeze actually, and then this sheer rock all around you. And then a short but bumpy 5-minute ride to the mine face. So this is where the hot and hard work takes place. You can see that a layer of rock has already been excavated here between 1 and 3 meters, and these wooden posts stand where it was. And on the other side you can see the layer of what's called black reef rock with these pebbles, white pebbles, inlaid. Behind me the drilling is taking place. What happens is that the rock is drilled, explosives are placed inside the rock, the mine is cleared, the device is blown up, and the rock is broken into small fragments, scraped down the hill, ready for extraction. Once the rocks come back up to the surface, they're ground in this mill into a very fine powder. 3,000 tons of rocks pass through this every day to create, in the end, just 10 to 15 kilograms of gold. So now we've come to the final stage of the process. The liquid gold is heated to 1400 degrees Celsius. It's extremely hot standing next to it, and it's poured out of the oven into these molds, ready to be cooled into the gold bars. And the final product, pure, gorgeous gold, extremely heavy, 20 kilograms, and this alone is $1 million, probably the most expensive weight I'll ever hold. It's what all the hard work goes into, changing this pure rock into this pure gold, a precious treasure from the heart of South Africa.
Timber, I think that's fantastic. Firstly, to be holding $1 million in your hands, it's just beyond. You can't even think of having that much wealth in your hands. But in terms of a video you could use in class as well, it's short, it's to the point, shows you the process without you having to actually go inside a mine.
Yes. Actually, also, Helen, myself as a teacher, I haven't been to a mine before, but I would have taken the mine and brought it into the class.
Yes.
In a way. So that's no excuse. So if you are quite privileged enough to have internet connection, you may use that as a visual aid or teaching resource, But now, I would use this before I even speak to the content. Let them see this, they create their own ideas, or they conceptualize it. Say, oh, okay, this is what actually happens, the physical and chemical processing. It also shows the kind of risk, in terms of safety, mining,
Yes.
which is something that we often have problems with in South Africa. If you follow current affairs, it also speaks to that, which is a big concern, a big issue with the labor unions and all. Now, if you check again, Helen, you'd realize that once learners have gotten a chance to see the video, if now I speak to the processes, the chemical equations, or the extraction of the mineral itself, even at the beginning of the video, they say, oh, this is in the west end of Johannesburg. Okay, then this is in my backyard.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for some, maybe they're in different provinces. It will be a different story altogether.
Yes.
But now they can relate this to the rather abstract, processes that we talk to. We can even create flowcharts from this.
I think it would work very well to create a flowchart.
Yes. Very, very well.
Yeah, because they see the physical, and then they're able to. We talk about the Johnston's triangle quite a bit, and we talk about looking at the macros and going to the sub-micro. So macro is what you can see what's happening. Sub-micro is what's actually happening on a molecular level, and then the symbolic is representing it.
I think another important aspect of it does it shows that you go about more than 30 kilometers into the Earth's crust.
Oh,
It does highlight maybe the types of mining that take place. This is deep underground mining,
yes,
as opposed to open cast. So we can be in a position to classify, something that takes place on the surface. You don't need to go 3 kilometers down the earth, it's getting hotter and hotter.
Yeah. Oh, no. Would you like to say anything more about this video before we move on to the next one?
It also, I think there was a point where the guy was giving the comment, said, I'm holding $1 million.
Yes.
Now, $1 million, not even rands.
Yes.
It also speaks to how economically important mining of gold is. And it's not every other country that's privileged to have gold deposits. So I think in South Africa we are in a better position economically relatively to other African countries. So we can get to export this. We create jobs. A whole lot of other factors come in because a lot of people are employed in the mining sector. Again, I think you have to realize that in different fields, commerce, science, all together in a mine, you find it there.
Yeah.
And also now you check, we always talk about poverty alleviation, creation of employment opportunities, and infrastructural development. If a brick can give you $1 million, then you expect if they produce quite a lot of that, the standard of living changes in that particular area. That's the whole idea of mining as an industrial sector.
Then, slightly off the topic, but on the topic as well.
Yes.
I heard quite a while ago of a place in China where they're taking old computer parts and they're mining them for the gold that's in them. Do you speak about where gold is used?
The uses of gold, yes.
So you don't just say engagement rings and pretty earrings?
No. Remember, we also spoke in some of the good points, we spoke about that they have to relate the physical property to the everyday life uses.
Yes.
So it's not just a precious metal on your ring or your necklace or bracelet.
Yes.
It goes far beyond that.
Okay.
Yes, as a metal, yes.
Okay.
And remember, Helen, it's not only gold. This is just but an example. We've got a vast array of minerals that you can talk to in your class, based on your context, where you are, This is just but an example.
Yeah. Okay, now this other video is quite a bit longer, so we're not going to watch all of it.
Okay.
But we have chosen 2 segments, you and I together, so let's watch the first segment. Okay.
I want you to step in here and give me a nice big smile.
Okay, we can skip that.
They are Gauteng's answer to Table Mountain. Mine dumps, tailings dams, slime dams, call them what you want. They are the legacy of 120 years of gold mining. They are poisonous, and they're everywhere on Gauteng's West Rand. Mariette Lieferink is an activist focusing on the mining pollution of the area.
We have at present 8,000 ownerless or abandoned mines, which is costing the government 100 billion rand. Now, I may just mention, if I say it is costing the government, it's actually costing the taxpayer.
So that's quite a sight. That land with the broken sand
Surface.
or surface. Yes,
Okay.
it's not even sand.
Yeah.
It looks like something from a movie.
Oh, but I think, Helen, what becomes important is, in as much as mining is a good thing going on, it has a positive impact. Also, when you tend to look at it from a different perspective, it does also have its own problem, which is part of the content that's prescribed that we have to look at in our classes, how mining impacts on the environment and humans alike.
Do you ask them to take a stand?
What I would normally do, I would guide them. Maybe I'll talk to that. It may be a research, like we said earlier on, that they would conduct a research based on the negative impact
Yes.
of mining in our environment. Because some people, they stay closer to the mines,
So they would suffer more. Yes.
They are more exposed to the dangers of irresponsible disposal of mine waste. Well, if you go back to that click, you'd realize that there are super mine dumps there. Those are there to stay,
Yes.
Now, you don't know what kind of hazardous substance are there, Now, if you're exposed to that continually, there are those long-term effects, that outweigh the benefits of mining as an industrial sector.
So the
that's
human
whole
cost
idea.
or the ecology cost. I
Yes.
don't know if ecology is the right word, but environmental.
You can't talk environment without ecology. Hence, we also said integration comes in at one point or the
Yes.
other. Your life science, they deal with the interaction of organisms in a natural environment. So we put a lot of hazardous substance. We disturb that kind of ecological balance. So they need to see that what they learn in the life sciences is not far removed from what we do in science. And just those connections become very important.
So that would be a good research task then,
Yes.
is analyzing the effects of mining on the environment.
Yes, and it also gives them the kind of background maybe that you'd want them to have. Because when you say, go and do a research on impacts of mining, negative to humans and the environment, okay, where do we start?
Yes.
Yet they see this, which is very much relevant to their environment. I think it gives them a better starting point altogether.
That's a very key point, I think, with doing any kind of research task or a project or anything. Give them something to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Give them some kind of guideline that this is how it should look, or this is what you should cover, or this is a starting thought.
Some of the points that we have to look at, if they can, this and more, it kind of works very well. That way.
Baseline, but you should be doing more than what the baseline is.
Correct.
Okay, the second clip is over here somewhere. Let's begin.
Agrees that the tailings dams have to go, but where should they go? That is the problem. Two different mining companies are currently planning tailings reclamation schemes. The first is by a consortium led by Harmony Gold, with added investment from the United States. The second is by an Australian company called Mintails. Both these schemes plan to remove several tailings dams on the West Rand. Both will use pipelines to pump the reprocessed tailings to two proposed mega tailings disposal facilities. And when we say mega, we mean the two biggest mine dumps you will ever see. The proposed site for the Harmony Superdump is just outside the town of Vogwel. The proposed size, 800 hectares, or more than 2 by 3 kilometers.
It's going to be higher than
Well, there was a map, so I suppose there's your geography.
Location of the mineral resources. It doesn't get any better than that.
And you would look at a map of the whole of South Africa and point out various things.
I'd look at provinces, let's say Gauteng. I'll concentrate on West Rand or Benoni, East Rand, where I know there's some particular mining activity that does take place there of note. If you talk to something that they know of, it kind of sparks the interest that you'd want learners to have going into the topic, So
and I think they do in geography cover types of rocks and things like that, and how
mineral ores, okay,
yes,
what
all
type
of those
of rocks, yes.
So
Correct.
it would be good to draw that all together.
Correct.
Yeah.
It does work very well with that. But now, if you check very well, I thought of this in a different way. Say, okay, how then do I let my learners take charge of the learning process of evaluating how mining impacts on the environment and how maybe it's connected to other industries like the farming sector. If you check, this is a very good context that I could use. Just it's in my opinion to engage learners in a debate. Okay.
Yes.
Now there was some farming activity that was taking place. It's a typical case study. There was some farming activity. Now it was discovered that there are some gold deposits. Now the mining has to displace the farming. Yet one depends on the other. Because remember, we speak to mining of phosphates, for fertilizers. We need fertilizers. So in as much as we say why mining, we can ask the same why agriculture. We depend on that for large scale food production. Now. You divide the class into two groups. Okay, yes. Some are against, some are for mining. Some are against mining. Now, by so doing, they need to justify their position or why they think it doesn't have to go on. In the process, I think they get to say out their own opinions, which is one of the skills that we spoke about earlier on, which the guidelines stipulate that we need to use this section to impart that kind of knowledge.
That must be a really interesting debate.
They get to talk,
and they like that
in English, in language, in any language for that matter. The debate is not something that's entirely new to them, So some they may be stronger in that part, so you give them a platform to shine. The confidence is good.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, but draw their attention to say, okay, we have said everything. Okay, what was the main idea? In as much as mining is good, there are some negative aspects of it which we have to take into consideration. We will speak to sustainable energy part when we look at the other visual aids at a later stage.
It's far more interesting than just providing a set of notes.
I think you gotta give learners the reason to come to your class at the end of the day.
Oh, that is a gem.
Yes.
You've got to give learners a reason to come to your class.
As opposed to the traditional way of doing things. Let's find a rather interesting way. And they like technology, they like playing around. So this is a good opportunity to, you just take charge of the class, make sure that everything is intact,
Yes. I think both of these videos are really good to be used in the class, and I'm really glad you've given us these clips because, they exist on YouTube.
Already.
Yes. But you've made us aware of them so we can put them on the blog and teachers can use them in the way that you've recommended.
And once they're still conducting their research beyond our contact session, they may entice to this to get a better understanding.
Yes.
I may have played it within that short space of time in class, and they're not so clear about it. They may go on to do this in the comfort of their homes, if at all they've the privilege to have such resources.
Yes, that is true. Well, let's take a look at these pictures that you've got for us. And there are 3 pictures here. Starting with the top one, what is it a picture of?
Okay, this has to do with the chemical processing. One may argue to say, it has to do with the production of energy, thermal electricity, because mining
so you're bringing
so much,
thermal energy into it.
all those things.
Yes.
And it also, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to say, but maybe it also speaks to sustainable energy, how best do we take care of our environment,
Yes.
Well, in some countries, I think I've been fortunate to travel. I found that something that our learners do not have is that kind of interest in the environment, and be accountable for whatever means of transport. You need to have as less emission as possible. We are trying to move in that direction, but I think it's something that we need to instill in our learners. So during the chemical processing, a lot of waste gases which are hazardous, toxic, are emitted. Then it comes back to your global warming phenomenon, which is something which is very much said about on the current affairs. So we make them aware. We draw their attention to that.
I have a question which you might not have the answer to.
Okay.
I've driven through a couple of these places, and the chimneys are really, really tall. Is that to keep the hazardous gas away from the lower levels of, ground level?
I'm not sure whether it's a standard requirement for if you set up a processing plant or something.
Yeah.
But still, it goes to our atmosphere. It comes with the air that we breathe.
Okay.
And also the density of gases is different. If it's heavier than air, it will come back to us.
And
we continue to sniff
that's another bit of revision, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe that's another food for thought for learners. As a teacher, and you don't have to know all the answers.
That's very true.
You tell me, maybe that's one of the ideas of a research project. If you can manage to give them that platform to take charge of their own learning, it becomes much interesting. Oh, did you know? Okay, we share those kind of ideas. And I even become honest to them to say, some of the things I'm learning them from you guys. At least they have something to bring to the table, and they stop thinking of me as the fountain of wisdom.
Yes, although you are very clever.
Still learning how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then the next picture, and we're going to go anti-clockwise, is the one of the water.
Oh, okay. You would have, learners would have maybe some heard or learned about poisoning of water. It also has to do with irresponsible disposal of mine waste. As you can see, there's some kind of contamination. It goes back to your biodiversity again. Aquatic life. That's another form of intercredation that comes in. So I think it's a if you say there shall be poisoning, okay. Those are the notes,
Yes.
Can they make sense of how, in reality, how does it? So we bring life to science,
So you're using the pictures to supplement what's in the notes already, and maybe to start another conversation.
Yes. Or you may just show them to the learners, and then let them say whatever they think or their opinions about it. And then it also gives you an idea of what they already know, and maybe you could just build on to that. If at all there are those misconceptions, as I always say, that's the right time to let them bring them forward, and then maybe we can collectively do that as a class and allow those stronger elements to kind of respond to such problems.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I would do. In a typical class, you'd have those stronger learners. And they always longing for that opportunity to show others that
yes,
I do understand this. Allow them that opportunity. Yeah. So that's how I could use that.
Now the last picture I've actually found the most interesting. Why don't you explain it to us?
Okay, you can see, Helen, that's it's something that goes on in most parts of Johannesburg, it has become a problem, and we need to appreciate, as learners appreciate, that mining is an economic contributor. It means to do it, to carry it out, you need to be licensed.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to have permission to do that. So you saw the commentary, the guy holding a brick saying it's worth $1 million. So, okay, we've got a lot of poverty going on, high rate of unemployment, which is quite huge, in South Africa. So we have this problem of people doing illegal mining.
So this is a picture of people doing illegal mining.
Yes, which has become quite common over the past few years. So now this is another problem that mines bring to our communities. Now you have people risking their lives, to do that, and no form of protection whatsoever, safety.
Yes.
And we are saying that the mines expose us to these hazardous substances. Then you carry out mining without the proper, safety care, and it becomes a problem. And also, it has to do with poverty, which is a factor that we always talk to, and learners need to appreciate that.
I think this would be a really interesting debate with a group of teenagers about what is right and what is wrong.
Yes.
And you could talk about all sorts of things. You could talk about it on a national scale. Is it right that the taxes should be paid on a natural mineral? Mm-hmm. And you could talk to it from a more local scale.
Yes.
What's worse, mining illegal gold or stealing copper cables, or there are just so many avenues. And then you can talk about the safety concerns, and you can talk about the process that you would usually go through with the real mining versus the process over here and the quality of the material that would come out.
Obtained, yes. And we do quite a lot of that when it comes to the quantitative aspect of chemical, or percentage yield, your percentage purity, all those things. You bring that into that kind of discussion. It becomes more interesting, and this is, to me, one of the current issues.
Yes.
Yeah. So they need to be conscious of what happens around them. Not just take notes on mining and pass the test and go home.
I think this would be very interesting debate. Yeah. And when you have it with your students, I'd love to hear what they say.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yes.
Now, we've got just enough time to go through the good ideas. Mm-hmm. And your first point says allow learners to conduct a research, contextualized, so as to evaluate the impact of the mining industry.
Yes. Seeing that the research project is prescribed, it's not an option for one to do it. We have to do it. So if we contextualize the research, it brings more relevance to learners, and it makes learning more interesting. As you come to think of it, if I use gold mining, because I'm in Gauteng, it's something that they see the mine dumps, how it impacts on them. On the other hand, how Johannesburg is better developed compared to other provinces.
Else.
Yeah, so it speaks to infrastructure again.
Yes,
the impacts are quite far-reaching. So we need to make learners appreciate that. Yeah, after all, So it's also very important as an economic contributor. Versus agriculture, of course, even though there are those connections or links that we spoke to earlier on, So I think it's a good thing to contextualize, because the more you contextualize it, it becomes relevant, which is the key thing. Yes.
That's another gem.
Yes.
Okay, it's your next point says use of current affairs in the mining industry to highlight the importance, and of course, Marikana.
Who doesn't know about that?
Sure.
They may have probably heard or maybe have their own conceptions of what the Marikana. What happened there, which is quite sad and regrettable. And if you look at mining as an industrial activity, it employs quite a lot of people. So those employment opportunities, they serve to uplift the standard of living, which is something that is quite positive. Then when you get labor actions like the strikes, the protests, and mining doesn't take place, now you've got people having no source of income, and all the problems that are there because of strike actions. I think the Marikana on its own, to me, it serves as one point. It says to us, indeed, mining is important. That's how we feed a lot of families. And fortunately, some of the learners, some of their parents, maybe they are employed, whether it's skilled or unskilled labor, they appreciate, the source of income comes from mining. So that's how important it is as an industrial sector. So it's also good to bring in something which is current. It keeps even that interest of learners.
And mining is always in the news, so
it's always.
You can find something almost every day.
The price of the dollar,
yes.
the price of the gold, platinum, Brent crude, some of the things. But I'm sure they wonder, why do they tell us about this?
Yes.
It affects the price of bread that you buy every day. So they begin to appreciate that smaller detail, which is very key.
Okay, your third point says carry out hands-on experiments to investigate the physical properties of some minerals and thereby justifying their everyday life uses.
Okay, we spoke of different types of minerals that an educator or a teacher may choose for the learner, and learners are at liberty to choose. And take, for example, copper. You bring just a big idea or a question, say, why do we use copper for the pipes, for the geyser and so forth, instead of iron? That speaks to the physical properties of matter. It's still prior learning, but at this point you are bringing the attention of the learners to say, okay, if it can resist corrosion, it means we can use water for it. So the everyday life and what they learn in class, so they establish those kind of links, which is, in my view, very important. So it means science is everyday. You cannot escape that fact. So the more they appreciate that, I think the better. And it makes even learning more interesting, Yeah.
Yes. And your last point says use of visual teaching aids such as DVDs to bring a better understanding of chemical processing. So like the videos that we watched.
The videos that we watched. You come to think of it, the traditional way of doing it, like I've been taught, you give notes, the flow charts of the chemical processes. Oh, this is how iron is exploited until we get the end product. But if you use visual aids, I've never been in a mine before myself as a teacher. Then it would be unreasonable for me to expect that my learners understand it even better.
Yeah.
It may be some, not entirely everybody. So the visual aids, they kind of bring what exactly happens in a mine into class. Like we used the DVDs before, the pictures, just those illustrations. It kind of creates. I had a different impression of what a mine is, But when I saw those videos, it gave me the reality of 3 kilometers deep. Oh, that's how it is,
Sure.
Then that kind of impression that you create. I think teaching aids become very important. Very key.
Okay, we have come to the end of our time.
Okay.
Are there any parting comments you want to say to everyone out there?
Definitely. I like to say, as far as this section, probably the last section they do before they move on to the next grade. This is a very different section. We didn't do any writing today. Learners do most of the learning. Just the teacher is there to control the whole process and make sure that it takes place it goes in the direction that is intended.
Okay.
So we need to watch out for that. The integrations that we spoke of.
Yes.
Establishing links, everyday science, and what happens with what we learn in class. We need to relate that together. I think that would be very key. So I would take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Themba. You've made... To be honest, when I saw the title of today's show, I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's to be okay. But you've made it sound really, really interesting and inspiring, something that's really fun to teach.
I'm glad I did,
yeah.
I'm glad I did. Surely there can be a better way,
Yes, give them a reason to want to come to your class.
That's the whole idea. Okay.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dylan, for pushing all the buttons. Remember that if you want to win a phone or a tablet, all you need to do is send us your teaching resource. You can send it to competitions@digitalclassroom.co.za. Until next week, happy teaching. Goodbye.
created using Powtoon.